So our topic this evening um, is the healing nature of life, and we're going to be looking at healing in the context of life and our lives um, on a macro as well as a micro scale to bring fullness of context and understanding. And I want to begin by taking us down a road of opening up our minds. And I'm going to start by saying right where you are, right where you're sitting, right where you're listening to me, right around you, the atmosphere or the air around you, it is teeming with life and activity. There is luminescent lights all around us, but we're not aware of the photons because its wavelength is out of our eyes' ability to capture it. So we're not aware that that light around us exists. There is sound around us, but our ears are not able to hear it. But if we were to get a radio and turn it on and tune it just to the right frequency, the sound will begin to fill the ear. And it's not that the radio is making the sound, it's just tuning in to the frequency that's already around us, but we are not aware of the sound that's all around us. There's lots of life around us. Um, Bacteria, spores, there are multiple organisms that we are breathing in with every breath. There are trillions of organisms that's filling the air around us. In fact, without them, we wouldn't even really, our physical body will not function optimally if these organisms did not populate the air around us. But we walk through the air every day and we're not aware of these activities and these phenomena that surround us. In a very similar way, there is an intelligent, living order to the flow of life that's all around us. It runs through and in everything, and it sustains everything that's around us. I'm talking about there's a spiritual reality that is all around us, just like there's activity in the air, and it runs through everything in existence, but we're not aware of it. But this intelligent, living, orderly existence, there is a frequency to it which resonates with us, but we are not aware of its resonance because our awareness is locked into our physical nature. What we see, what we hear, so much so that we think that what we see, hear, and touch is the only reality that there is because our senses tell us that. Yet there is so much around us that we're not aware of. And anything that we are not aware of, for us, it doesn't really exist. And so I want to really highlight that awareness really is our superpower because awareness can be so expansive to where we can become so aware of what is around us that we can actually tap in to these dimensions of reality and deeper truths and understanding that exist all around us. And so when we talk about the healing nature of life, we must understand that there is an order and a flow to life that is orchestrated by this intelligent order of flow and frequency of wholeness. Science, philosophy, spiritual truth, they all tell us that life is one inseparable, interconnected whole. And it's something that we go through life, but we don't really pay attention to. Again, it's not real because we're not aware of it. When we become aware of it and we stay aware of it, the more real it could become and it would become. But this frequency of wholeness is what determines that the healing nature of life. You see, healing is not something that when we think of healing, we're thinking of healing of a sickness. And that's usually the context we know it as. But whether it be a plant, an animal, or a human being, healing is something that runs through nature. It is, we see it from the cosmos, the dance of the cosmos that marvels science. We see it in nature and the cycles of nature on our planet. We see it in ourselves, how our body heals, repairs, and regenerates. It's a continuous, it's a design of life. And the design, the very structural design of existence and life is wholeness. And because it is whole, and because that's the design, it cannot be broken. Because the nature of the design of life is eternal. And so it can't be broken. I'm saying this, I'm trying to paint a picture to get us to the point that brokenness and illness and sickness and things that appear to be contrary to this order and frequency and flow of wholeness throughout life, it's really an illusion and a misinterpretation of what's really happening. And so as we get into this evening, looking at understanding healing as it relates to our lives and what's all around us, and the watchword that we want to have is our awareness, because what we are not aware of doesn't really exist, even though it may actually exist. But the difference is our awareness. And I want to begin by making just 4 points that I want to bring out throughout our presentation. And the first one is that you and I, we lack nothing. We are and have always been whole. And I mean that not just as it relates to sickness or disease or how well we may function as a human being. I mean that in every aspect of our living experience is that we truly lack nothing. You and I, we have everything that we could possibly need to live the most effective life, to live the most prosperous life, and to live the life that we can dare to dream or imagine. We have everything and we are already fully equipped for it. We're simply just not aware of it. The other thing that I want to bring across is that healing is not something we have to make happen, but allow to happen. It is what life naturally does when it flows in its divine order of wholeness. Everything in the universe is interconnected. Everything exists to serve something else. Your life, the fact that you exist, your life has purpose, and that purpose is to serve the purpose of something else and other things in life. So we should never ever sell ourselves short that we are less than. We are incredible and miraculous and amazing beings. The other point is when our mindsets, attitudes, choices, habits, and behaviors flow from a fractured state, it will reflect the deficiencies, imbalances, dysfunctions, and eventual diseases we develop in our bodies. In other words, when we develop what we call chronic lifestyle conditions that eventually evolve out of dysfunctions and imbalances and deficiencies, it's not by random or by chance. We are not victims of disease. It happens because of how we have been engaging life on every level of our existence, how we have been engaging it. And so we must not think that life is just happening and out of nowhere we develop an illness. It doesn't work that way. The seamless design of the body to function as a harmonious whole is a divine blueprint for experiencing the quality of life we are meant to live. Our body is a marvel of design that science has not even begun to understand the majority. It's just small fractions of how this marvel of a human design works as far as our body goes. But we do know that the 70 trillion cells that make it up function in such interconnected harmony. As one big orchestra and symphony, it's designed to function that way. And when that is in its aligned order, there is no sickness and disease, there is optimal function, and miraculous things happen. But when that begins to lose its tune and it goes out of harmony and goes out of symphony, that's when disorder and dysfunction starts to come in. But the very design and the function of our body gives us that blueprint of how we are meant to live and the quality of life that we can really experience. This is very important for us because this is what we are facing, you and I, as we go about trying to make life work. We are all trying to live a better life. We're all trying to get to a place where life could be comfortable, where we could enjoy the best of the life that we could dare to dream of. But the entire globe is faced with this growing global epidemic called chronic lifestyle diseases. 60% of adults have lifestyle diseases on this planet. It accounts for 74% of global deaths, with an annual mortality rate of 50 million. This is an epidemic, or you can call it a pandemic, that is far greater than the COVID pandemic that had the world shaking a few years ago. 2 years of shaking, and it took the authorities say about 20 million lives, and it shook the world up. But here we have a pandemic that's claiming 50 million every year, and it doesn't even raise an eyebrow as to how chronic this condition is. Not only is it affecting our quality of life individually, because whatever may be our pursuits and our aspirations in life, should we get diagnosed with a chronic lifestyle condition, everything comes to a halt and that begins to overtake, that becomes the priority. But apart from that, the World Health Organization calls it the global burden of disease because the entire world is the economic structures of governments across the world are being burdened by the healthcare dilemma that we're facing all across the world. So it's not just me and you individually that we are seeing escalating percentages, which the World Health Organization says on their website in the coming decade, they expect these numbers to get worse. So this is an urgent call where we need to do something for ourselves and our families. We need to understand this because why should it be getting worse when we're supposed to be getting smarter and more technologically advanced? And it's not just us individually, but the global burden of disease is affecting the economies of the world. And why is that important for us to even think of? Because as I interact and engage with people day to day, as I'm sure you do, we are talking about how much tougher life is getting, how much more expensive it is to live, how much more costly everything is becoming, and how tough life is becoming. That's a common story that you're hearing today. And yes, it is true. But of all the different reasons why we can see inflation and why the cost of living becoming higher and becoming more burdensome financially for us. One of the most prevalent and systemic reasons is the healthcare bill that governments have to deal with. It takes up a large part of most governments' GDP. And so when it comes to things like our food systems, insurances, our taxes, our housing, this has a major impact. So while we are complaining that the cost of living is getting higher, you and I are personally engaged in making that a reality because we are the ones that's choosing to live in a particular way that's driving these numbers up. This is not a random thing. We are very much involved. While it might be a top-down issue from a governmental perspective, it really is a bottom-up issue from you and I. Because these lifestyle conditions, we are the ones that's developing it by the choices we make. You see, chronic disease is not the problem. It is simply the expression, the outcome, the consequence of the lifestyles that we live shaped by our state of being. That's something that we're going to have to get a handle on. And so we're not victims of disease. I call this the victim paradigm. Because we don't understand this clearly, which we're going to get a better understanding today, is that we think that when we see disease as a threat, something that we have to fight, something we have to declare war on, disease is not a threat, it's just a signal of life in its amazing design trying to restore, because wholeness cannot be broken. It will always recalibrate itself to maintain its balance. And we just don't understand how that works fully. And so when our body begins to give us signs and symptoms, it is just the body in its own way trying to restore its natural balance. When we engage in a way of living, thinking, and being and feeding our bodies that pushes against the natural balance, the body's natural inclination is to restore its balance. And when it pushes against imbalance, it creates what we call symptoms. Our body is telling us things are out of alignment, but we don't have that understanding and awareness because we've been taught to think that we are victims of disease. We also think that we are powerless when it comes to this. I want us to know that we are anything but powerless. We are fully equipped, not just to live the most effective life, but to overcome any illness. It is built into us. I mean, we can do it without having to go through any type of invasive interventions. 70% increase in prescription drug use in trying to treat chronic lifestyle disease since 2010, and it has gone higher since. And it has contributed to the third leading cause of death, which is called iatrogenic disease. Disease that we develop secondary problems due to the very treatment model that we have. So while the treatment models that we have in the healthcare system may save our life and help us to manage conditions, it will not restore our health, but it oftentimes will make things gradually spiral down until the lifestyle condition takes us out. And we have come to a point in our lives where we think that this is just the way life is. You're going up the hill, and then you get to your 40s, you start down the other side of the hill, and that is the pattern of life. That is not the case. That may be common, it's not normal. Healing is not something that we have to make happen. It's not something to induce or activate. It is the very flow of life that flows through our body. And if we have a condition and it's not being healed, something is blocking the natural flow of wholeness in our bodies. So we need to get a very clear definition of what true health is. The World Health Organization says that health is a state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. I inserted the word spiritual there they did not have it, being politically correct. But when I say spiritual, I am in no way talking about a religious system, but a very real and dynamic part of our makeup that makes us capable of being able to tap into a reality of life that is beyond what our physical senses can perceive. It is what animates and gives life to this physical body, and it taps into a dimension that the physical senses are not capable of. It is where the very source of our life emanates. That's what I'm, so when I say spiritual, that's what I'm speaking of. But health is a state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well being. It's a state of being. It is not a feeling in the body, and it's not just how the body is functioning. Those are outcomes of it, of the state. And the state is our complete life. Every dimension and every aspect of our life is what we call health. And it is based on how we are, how we engage with life, how we interpret, how we respond to life, our attitudes, behaviors, etc. It is how we are, which is always based on who we are, how we perceive ourselves, our sense of identity, who we, that is, and I'm telling us, this is the root of where we must get to if we are going to change not just our lives, the quality of our lives, our future, but by extension, if with one life at a time, we could actually change our environment. We could change our economy because it really does start with us. And so your life is your health. And we need to be sovereign over our health and well being because every area of our life stands on it. We have to take charge. We are the ones that have the rule over it. We are not victims of it. True health is the full expression of our life, and it's rooted in a clear awareness of how we see ourselves. And this is fundamentally where the issue is, how we see ourselves, who we understand ourselves to be because of what has been taught to us and how we might have been culturally shaped by society. But I want us to know that you and I, we are amazing human beings that we, once we understand and we get in touch with that, we would be absolutely amazed of what we can accomplish, what we can do in the quality of life that we can have on this earth. And so, sovereign health, as we move forward, I want to look at this quote by Thomas Edison because it speaks to where we're going in our discussion. He said, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease." And so, for us, how are we going to be able to engage life correctly that we can change this picture? Is that we have to understand the cause. And in understanding the cause, we will know how to prevent. And in that model of cause and prevention lies the answer of how we can overcome illness even without medicine. This was a very insightful code that he did back in the 1800s, and he must have known something about the human design because healing is inherent by design. It's not something we have to make happen. Healing is the divine flow of life that's woven into the very fabric of the human design. And when that flow comes into full alignment with divine order, spontaneous healing is what occurs. Spontaneous healing, and for those who are not aware, you should go and look it up because it's well documented across the globe in all the medical literature. There are books written on it by medical and scientists. Spontaneous healing, of which there are tens of thousands of cases over the years, are people who have developed terminal conditions and life-threatening conditions to which there is no medical cure. And they go through a process of change in their lives and completely overcome the condition without any medical or any other type of therapeutic intervention. The condition, as the name says, it's spontaneously, which simply means without cause, it just goes away. Now, this is being highlighted because within us is the capacity. It is, and it's throughout nature. In fall, the leaves may fall from a tree and it may look bare, but in spring, it comes back. No different to, we may cut our hair and it will grow back. We may get a cut on our hands and it will miraculously mend all by itself. We don't have to do anything. We may break a bone and it will knit itself back together because this is the design of not just the human body, it is the design of existence itself. Everything flows to the frequency of wholeness and harmony. And when anything pushes it out of balance, it will always course correct. And the course correct may seem as though it's a negative, but it's always a positive. In a way, like if we were to drink something or eat something that was spoiled or not good and we were not aware of it, and we may end up with diarrhea or we may start to vomit and throw up. And we think that that's a negative, but the body is just expelling what doesn't belong, that is harmful. But in our misunderstanding, we will take something to stop the diarrhea, or we will take something to stop the vomiting, when the truth is we ought to let it happen because it will come to an end far quicker than when we stop it. Much like we get a virus, as they say, and we get this big fever, and we look to shut the fever down, and we deal with the virus for 10 days. When if we let the fever run and just maintain it not beyond a particular level, in 2 days it's gone because the body. So what seems like a negative is always course correction, and that's not just in our bodies; it's happening right across this globe on a macro level as well. And so spontaneous healing, which is when that flow of life is optimal, when it's aligned with the flow of wholeness, that's when we get it. This is validated by all the medical sciences, psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, quantum biology. It is even seen in spirituality. For those of you who may know the biblical scriptures, you will see that most, if not all, of the major healings that's recorded that Jesus did, whether it be the woman who had a hemorrhaging for years, or the blind man at the gate, whenever Jesus did spoke his word and they were healed, Jesus would always say, your faith has made you whole. Your faith has made you whole. My point is this: even in these cases, Jesus is pointing to the catalyst that brought this about was in you. Your faith. Your faith has made you whole. We possess within our very design, our very divine makeup, the capacity not just to recover from illnesses, but to be able to live at a level of life that we all dream of. But what it points to is that there is a part of our human makeup. We can't quite put our fingers on it. We are not even aware of it because we are not even taught to even consider it, in the same way that we don't even know that there is a luminescent light all around us, or that we, with every breath that we take in, we're literally breathing in trillions of organisms. But we're not aware of it. So for us, it doesn't exist. But there exists a part of us that taps into the very design of life. It is what enlivens us. It is our true spiritual essence. That is where it comes from. And so if we understand, get an idea, which is all we could do today. We can't go deep and just get an idea of how it works. This is how we lose our sovereign state of being and we develop states of being that are contrary, that contributes to this growing epidemic that is, by extension, creating economic and social dysfunctions that we complain about and we don't even recognize it's just extensions of how we choose to live on an individual level. And I hope I'm coming across clear. When you look at yourself in a mirror, when we look at ourselves and we look at this physical form, we are seeing this human form and we identify with it as who we are. We look at, we either like how it looks or we don't like how it looks. You know, we are taught to pay attention to its appearance and how we might adorn it and dress it, etc. But this physical form is what we identify with. All things in our social structure teaches us to identify with this as who we are. But inside of this physical form, there are three dynamics, three dimensions that are interconnected as one that gives it the experience of what we call life. We know it to be spirit, soul, and body. But these three dimensions they're all inseparable, and each one exists to serve the existence of the other, to create this human life and the experience that we would have. Spirit is who we are. It is our true source and our true essence of being. Soul is where spirit filters through mind and heart and expresses itself in the body, animating this body and giving it life. If this flow is free and this flow is clear and this flow is unobstructed in any way, that is what people who experience spontaneous healing is when they come to the recognition that there is within them a source of life that doesn't just run the body. It didn't just build the body in the womb and runs it. Trillions of functions happening now that we're not aware of. It sustains it. It's what heals it. It is the very flow of life that flows through when that presence is resonant, bringing about a homeostasis. That is how the healing truly happens. And so when spirit, through consciousness, spirit expresses itself as consciousness and it's filtered through the soul, when it filters through the soul, it filters through as the nature of consciousness, which is awareness. And I'm not going to get too deep in this, but this awareness, it produces an emotional resonance. And that emotional resonance is what shapes inspired thought. And that inspired thought becomes aligned with words and actions. And word and actions, they carry that divine resonance into outer experience. This is when everything is in its divine order, when everything is flowing freely. Our nature of spirit, our essence of spirit, flows through the essence of our being that's called heart and mind. And it does that through consciousness, and the essence of which is awareness. Awareness, if we're not aware of something, it doesn't exist. If we are aware, the things about our awareness, it can expand into a transcendent level to where we would literally see around us what other people are not seeing. That's literally so. But how we know it to be, when it flows this way, emotions is what gives rise to thought. And thought comes into words and actions and expressions. But because we are culturally conditioned and our awareness is shaped by our physical senses, by our physical nature, we know that thought gives rise to emotion, which is really the backward way. In the real world, emotions is said to be the energy of thought. It emanates from, we have a thought, and then the emotion follows. It really is the backward flow. But what it does, oops, that, what it does is that it creates a veil right here. When the flow of life flows from the outside in rather than the inside out. When our state of being, when our thoughts and emotions are governed by our physical nature instead of our spiritual nature, a tension is created within the soul. Our thoughts and emotions become governed by external qualities of reality, which are contrary to that of spirit. And it creates a veil right here that blocks the flow and creates a shadow in the body. It's like a veil blocking the light or a cloud blocking the sun creates a shadow. And that's what disease is. Disease, dysfunction, imbalances is when this flow is not free. And what happens? How does that happen? Well, identifying with our physical nature fractures wholeness. When physical senses dominate awareness, we believe what we see, touch, or hear is all that there is. Our awareness now is locked into a physical reality. This disconnects awareness from its divine source, no longer resonant with the flow of spirit, but instead reacting to form. All human beings, we live in this place. That's why spiritual things cannot be known intellectually. They have to be spiritually discerned. In other words, you have your mind and heart must be calibrated spiritually in order to discern the deeper truths of spirit or spiritual principles. But we don't get there. We just make an acknowledgement that we are spiritual beings, but it's not our existential reality in terms of function because it's blocked right here at the soul. With awareness anchored in physical deficiencies of lack and limitation, life is driven by survival through comparison, competition, and control, by appearance, performance, achievements, and doing more rather than being more. Life becomes defined by doing rather than by being. But when doing flows from being, doing is so much more effective and much more is accomplished with much less effort. But without the being, and when doing replaces that because our sense of identity is now of an egoic nature, which is how we are shaped by society, and it happens from children. Sometimes it even begins within the womb. But when our sense of identity, our state of being is now defined externally, where my sense of worth and my sense of value of who I am is now based on the job I have, the money I have, where I live, the accolades and my achievements, etc. When my sense of well-being is defined by whether the external reality is the way I prefer it to be, and when it's not, my life falls apart. When my sense of well-being is externally driven, I'm living by a false self that's bound to form. This misaligned identity creates a conflict between the truth of who we are, which we are not aware of. We may acknowledge it, but we are not aware of it. And the conflict between our true essence of being and the false perception that we have been acculturated into, it produces a vibration of dissonance right here. Rather than resonance, we have dissonance. And that dissonance manifests itself as low-grade tension. This is all scientifically validated. Emotional suppression, biological disharmony. This resistance creates an internal pressure imbalances and ultimately the symptoms that we call stress. Stress is a major cause of all types of problems today, not just physical disease, relational problems, and the way the world is today that we say the whole moral fiber, the moral fabric of society, social polarizations, etc. We look at the world today, it starts right here. But the expression of it individually is what we call sickness and what we call disease. It just extends further out now into other, and it now infiltrates other aspects of the social structure. But stress, which you want to zero in on, the authorities say that stress is, the World Health Organization says that stress is when you have worries of things internally and externally. The American Psychological Association defines stress as psychological and physiological imbalances that happens internally and externally around you. We are so even unclear about what stress is in our definitions and because we define everything externally. We define our well-being externally. We define and we come up with our approach to disease is externally. We need to take things externally. We need to, because our reality is all externally based. There is an internal reality that taps into the very flow and order and nature of life itself, of whom we are a drop of that very ocean. We are that entire ocean in a single drop in an individual life. We have such capacity, but we are just completely unaware of this reality. And as we grow in awareness of it, and it's not difficult, but it does require discipline. It does require focus. It does require stepping away from the habitual ways we have been taught to think and live and be. But as we engage that, we will see miraculous things happen. But the authority tells us that this thing we call stress accounts for 60 to 80%. Between 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic or recurrent state of stress. Up to 90% of doctor visits, stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of all human illnesses and disease. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. Epigenetics. Chronic stress increases the odds of developing Alzheimer's by 145%. And that's just part of it. And so we look at stress, and now we're treating stress like it is a disease in and of itself, where now you're taking medication to deal with stress, which is creating secondary issues again. And then you have to take another drug on top of that to counteract the side effects. And we end up in another cascade going on again because we think that stress has to do with the way life is happening around us. And not understand that life is happening around us the way it's happening because of how it starts from inside of us. Starting with a state of body and a state of mind that is out of balance, because it is not, rather than being defined by truth and the qualities of spirit, love, peace, joy, compassion, and the positive things, it is defined by an external reality which is governed by fear, separation, limitation, comparison, competition, me and you, us and them. A whole sense of separation because it's a fractured state of being. When life flows from the inside out, everything is seen as one. When it flows from the outside in, it becomes a fractured state of being. This identity crisis, which creates this inner conflict, which is what defines stress, it causes us to live in ways that contributes to our personal demise. Inauthentic living, and it expresses itself this way. If we can identify any of these type of things, and we all have it, myself included, and we all have it to different degrees. This is all part of, when it's like this, we will experience this phenomenon we call stress, and stress will always work inside us to bring that inner conflict, to bring that demise. It blocks the flow of our divine life. It blocks what will naturally heal and repair our bodies. And it expresses itself like this. It is privately experiencing life one way, but publicly pretending life is another. It is projecting self-confidence while still disturbed by what others think about us. It is judging others for improper behaviors while justifying our own. Proclaiming to value truth, yet not be honest with ourselves or with others. It's recognizing the value of health, yet willfully engaging in unhealthy habits. Just think for a moment of how we live very fractured. It is wanting inner peace, yet we would choose to harbor thoughts, resentment, worry. It's thinking one way, but saying another. It is feeling one thing, but doing another. It is when our inner well-being is defined by outer circumstances. We are living an inverted way of life. This is the long and short of it. So stress doesn't arise from the external circumstances of life alone, but from how we interpret and react to these circumstances, which is entirely shaped by an internal framework of our mindsets, arising out of an unstable sense of self. So, ladies and gentlemen, who we believe ourselves to be becomes the filter through which we will experience life, how we will engage with it. When our inner sense of self is not correctly aligned, every thought, emotion, word, and action flows from a distorted place. Stress becomes inevitable, and living unfolds from an unstable state of persistent imbalance. That is why we have a growing epidemic, and it's why 60 to 80%, some statistics says more, of why we are seeing this escalation of sickness and disease on our planet. And it's extending into how it's affecting our economic structures around us and making life more difficult. Why? Because the healthcare bill of countries is one of the largest bills that they have to deal with, and it ripples through the entire society. And that's an interesting study all by itself. And so how does this translate into disease? Through the central nervous system, because the central nervous system is the means by which we experience life. Our brain, which is encoded with all that we need for this body to function, and the nervous system through which it communicates, that is the central nervous system. And to explain it simply, the central nervous system extends into what is called the autonomic nervous system, which controls all bodily functions. And it has two branches, the sympathetic branch, which deals with stress. So whenever we are in a stress situation, whenever there's anxiety and frustration and anger and upset and rage, resentment, and we harbor these and we are in an unstable sense and we're stressed, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in. And when that kicks in, it starts to create oxidation, inflammation, and all the other ingredients that's needed to give rise to these conditions, all medically and scientifically validated. Every known chronic lifestyle condition that emerges in our body is driven by sympathetic dominance. The second branch is the parasympathetic nervous system. This one deals with healing and recovery, but this one becomes dominant when there is mind-body coherence, when homeostasis exists, when what flows from mind to body is harmonious, it's clear, it's clean, it's joy, it's love, it's peace, it's the positive vibrations of life. You see, the central nervous system is regulated by our state of mind, and that's measured by brainwave activity. So in neuroscience, we can measure the state of mind of somebody, and we can measure it, how it's impacting our physiology and our psychology. And so this whole central nervous system that's running all of our physiology, it's regulated by our state of mind, and we can measure that. And so what we've been able to determine is that when brain waves reflect in a harmony that's defined by positive vibrations, love, peace, joy, gratitude, etc., the central nervous system shifts the autonomic nervous system into parasympathetic dominance. And so there's healing, there's repair. When there is spontaneous healing, or when there's, and regardless of how immediate or how long it takes, it's always because there is the parasympathetic system is dominant. Now we need to have them both. They both function in harmony. When living is from the outside in, the sympathetic system is dominant. When living is from the inside out, the parasympathetic system is what's dominant. We need to have the sympathetic system because it's part of our emergency response. When there's a crisis and we need to move quickly, there's sympathetic dominance. It upregulates. We're able to we go into a stress mode, and then it settles right back down into its normal mode. The problem is not that there is sympathetic system, is that it is chronically running all the time. As science tells us that 70% of people live with their sympathetic nervous system always in overdrive every day of life. Sometimes even in our sleep, it's still running. And it sends a cascade of things. Why is that happening? Why are we living like that? Oh, life is stressful. Life is, gosh, it's the bills, it's the finances, it's the people on the job, it's the traffic, it's everything external. It's not. It is how we interpret it because of our state of being driven from the outside in rather than its natural design and flow of order, which is from the inside out. And that's what's happening. And so, what is the solution? The solution is that we need to be able to live in such a way where we can synchronize brain waves to reset the central nervous system to bring back that balance between mind and body so the flow can happen freely. In other words, we have to restore this inside out flow. We have to live by design, not by default. And when we can do that, and we can have more pure thoughts and positive emotions, and we speak uplifting words and have actions that align, and they're all one and the same frequency. That's what wholeness really is. When we can do that, we can restore the natural harmony between mind and body, that homeostasis, which keeps the parasympathetic system dominant, which keeps that flow freely. It's cultivating that state of being of inner harmony. That means we have to engage in practices that of our well-being, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and socially. We have to engage in ways of living that helps to bring them in alignment and in balance. And we know that's a lifetime of a lifestyle. That's engaging a process of change, of transformation. As we know, it could be very involved to do that. But what if there was a way that we can actually synchronize our brain waves to reset the central nervous system to actually resemble a state of mind that is in harmony? What if that could be done while we may be engaged in the process? What if there is actually a way to do it so naturally that it did not involve any medicine, any drugs, any ingredients, any type of pills or potions or anything like that, that we could actually bring our brain waves back into harmony and balance to resemble a state of mind that's actually harmonious and in order? What if that could be done? That brings us to the most profound discovery that has ever been made in human wellness. And that discovery has introduced a completely brand new approach to wellness and human well-being on a whole. And it was discovered by this gentleman called Jay Daliwa. He's the CEO and founder of a company called Superpatch. And what he has discovered has ushered in a brand new paradigm of wellness. And it was inspired by hope, framed in compassion, and trusted for its safety and effectiveness. Why? Because it was born out of trying to find a solution for his mother's multiple sclerosis, a neurodegenerative condition. And after 15 years of neuroscience research and development, what he discovered has led him to recognize that he has something that the world has never seen, that everybody is looking for, everybody needs, because it is so safe, it is so non-invasive, that it can impact the entire world on the healthcare arena in a way that has never been done before. And so his vision is to build something generational that is going to transform the world, and it can. Why? Because all that I just went through to show, to bring us to us that life is designed naturally to heal because it's built on wholeness, just like the body. The body heals and repairs itself. Built into us is the capacity, a flow of life that runs through it. It built it, it runs it, and it heals it when everything is in order. What he's discovered taps into that without putting anything inside the body or without any costly way of equipment and these types of things. I'm going to show you a video where he's going to demonstrate how the technology, because Superpatch is a wellness technology company. And technology sounds like, oh, some kind of equipment. No, there's no equipment for this. But technology, because it's tapping in to the human technological design, which is a divine technology. Here's a 2-minute video where he demonstrates how it works. And then I'll explain it, show you what he's produced, and then we'll come to a conclusion. He calls it vibrotactile trigger technology.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about a Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrinket, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So Vox Life HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
And so the simplicity of the technology is based on Nobel Prize research that goes back way back into the 1930s and beyond, and it comes forward to more recent, in more early 2000s, where it was discovered that every cell in the human body sends and receives electromagnetic signals, which led to the discovery of things like MRIs and EEGs and EKGs, and these ways how we are able to now map inside the body. And then later on in the 2000s, there were two other Nobel Prize laureates that discovered that there are some receptors, ion channels, that are embedded in the sensory neurons of the skin that can convert the vibration and texture and temperature of anything that touches the skin. You know, anything that touches the skin sends a signal to the brain. And they've discovered that these channels in the skin, when it sends a signal, the brain interprets the information of what it is touching the skin. And that has led to what Superpat has been able to discover when they've combined these technologies. So as a way to understand it, that might be simple, is when you look at a QR code is just a pattern, and depending on how you arrange the patterns will determine the information that's embedded in there. But we may not be able to explain that when you point a camera at the QR code, the camera converts that visual pattern into a digital signal, and it unlocks the information that's inside of that pattern. In a very similar way, what Superpatch has been able to discover in 15 years of neuroscience research and development is that there are patterns that when they touch the skin, they will send a signal to the brain that can correspond with various neural networks in the brain. Every function, every mental and physical function that we have, there's neural codes or neural pathways or neural networks that govern how everything in the human body functions. So if we have, say, an immune system that's not functioning optimally, it doesn't start with biochemistry, it starts with neurology. It means that the neural networks that govern how how optimal immune function is, that the brainwave activity associated with that is not in harmony, it's not in balance. When those brain waves are disharmonious or out of tune, so to speak, then you will not get optimal immune function. Everything starts in the brain. And so, what Superpatch has been able to discover is that with a particular pattern, it sends a signal to the brain and retunes it or synchronizes the brain waves so that now the immune system becomes, it resets it back to its optimal function. What an incredible thing. And it's absolutely introducing nothing into the body. So when we understand that every physical and mental function have these neural networks that control it, Superpatch has been able to discover over the years that what patterns will bring what areas of the brain back into function. And so after 15 years of research and development, vibrotactile technology, as it's called, or VTT, has become peer-reviewed and published research. Published now in some of the major journals around the world, like the International Journal of Research in Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, the International Journal of Family Medicine and Healthcare. This is very powerful, um, and probably the safest and most profound approach that there is to wellness today, because it's literally tapping into the very matrix of divine design in our body. It's not giving the body anything. The body already has its mechanism. But when that goes out of tune, and how does it go out of tune? Well, all the stresses and all the different things that can make the brain waves go out of balance, the patches just introduce the frequencies to restore it back to its normal function. Superpatch is the only company in its field that is being invited to some of the global symposiums around the world to present its groundbreaking technology. And so it is absolutely amazing at what the waves that this company is beginning to create around the world now. It is truly unlocking the potential within us just simply through the power of touch. The patch just touches your skin, the skin reads the pattern, sends a signal, and that pattern is associated with retuning a part of the brain that is not optimally balanced. And when it does, the flow, the natural flow that is constantly running through the system now becomes unhindered. It is now, all the patches are doing is just removing the resistance, retuning and removing the blockages so that the flow can be free. And so once the mind and body can be harmonized through brainwave synchronization, the mind becomes more orderly. That's important. And biological systems become more coordinated. This now reestablishes a mind-body balance of homeostasis, and that naturally upregulates what exists within our bodies in terms of self-repair. So to date, Superpatch has been able to discover 14 different technologies, 14 different patterns embedded onto these patches that, once applied to the skin, they will bring balance and harmony to these various networks. The one that you saw Jay demonstrated brings the brain into balance and harmony. It increases mobility, range of motion, balance, stability, increases energy, anti-aging for pain, athletic performance, reducing inflammation, for stress, anxiety, balancing the autonomic nervous system, the immune system, sleep, mental clarity and cognition, energy, moods, feeling depressed, feeling low. These things are focus, concentration, healthy skin, metabolism, habit control. You're finding it difficult to break habits, passion, which is really for male enhancement. And what they have in research and development now, which is good, we're going to be seeing rollouts over time, is absolutely amazing what they've been able to do. And so these are mind-body solutions that we all need. People are looking for things that are safe, things that are non-invasive, things that have no contraindications, no side effects, no allergic reactions. And you couldn't get anything that's cleaner than this. And so It doesn't matter what medication you're taking. It doesn't matter if you have medical implants in your body. There's no contraindications. You have a toddler that is sick, you can stick the patch without having to worry if there's going to have any kind of reaction with your child. They are effective, almost immediate results. And what's absolutely surprising is how accessibly priced they really are. And then when you combine the patches together and you get more collective efficacy of them, then you're going into a different dimension of being proactive and protective and preventive, and while you optimizing your body's ability to function more optimally. And so this is an approach that does not exist anywhere. I love it. I've integrated into my work because my work is about navigating life with spiritual awareness. My work is getting that inner well-being aligned, and people struggle with it because our minds are so restless we can't even harness it. But when we start to use super patches, not only is it going to make our bodies function better, we feel better, we live better, but what's more important is that our minds start to function more orderly. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is transformative. And so I want to encourage you to really think carefully about this and really consider this for your own self. They're very easy to use. There's no dosage like supplements and medicines where you have to take with meals. You have to put it on, use it particular times. Each batch lasts 24 hours, and then you change it out. They're safe. They've been tested. Very simple. You can pretty much put it anywhere on your body. And so my appeal to you this evening is look at your life with a view to get aligned and consider looking at super patches. It's a wearable self-care solution, and it's tailored by your body's own intelligence. I mean, that's just mind-blowing when you understand how these work. We have a Facebook page that have literally thousands of testimonies in different languages from people around the world. And you can take a look at that, but this is a way how you can unlock that potential within you as you look to be able to get yourself aligned. The simplest way and the most cost-effective way to be able to access this technology is to become part of the business community. Superpatch have what they call a blue ocean business for entrepreneurs. And whether you're interested in business or not, it's really irrelevant at this point because you want to be able to get access to wholesale pricing. And then optionally, you can, if you want to, you think there's a need, you can access their economic model, which is absolutely second to none. And so to be able to access the technology, it's as simple as $175, where you can get 4 of the technologies. That $175 includes a one-time $40 membership. So thereafter, it doesn't cost you that, where you can get 4 technologies of your choice. I highlighted those 3 because the Liberty, Peace, and Defend, those 3 working together, it brings a synergy between mind, body, and your biological systems, and it creates a very strong foundation for optimizing function, for protection and prevention, overall well-being. The 3 of them is something that I think everybody needs, but it could be any 4 of your choice. And so as you consider aligning your life, as you consider looking at reordering the flow from the inside out, as you begin to engage in different new lifestyle and habits, new patterns of thinking, etc., super patches become an excellent bridge to bridge that journey across and get us into that place. And so if you're interested, you can reach out to me, reach out to any of the partners that might have invited you to join the call, to learn about the patches, to learn about the concept of health that we are promoting. And for those of you who might be interested in the economic model, tomorrow evening at 6:30, we talk about that. That session is more interactive where you can get a chance to ask questions about anything this evening, questions about the economic model or questions about the technology. For those you can request the link for that for those of you who are interested in looking at that economic model. And so with that, I am going to say thank you very much for taking the time, for being on the call this evening. I trust that you would have heard something that would perhaps stir you, that will maybe even um, expand your thinking. But I want to encourage you to explore further, not just about the super patches, because it's a wonderful technology that is second to none. They work very well, but I want to encourage you to consider who you are, the powerhouse of a person or a being that you are, and that to consider this whole aspect of living life from the inside out as opposed from the outside in, because it is going to change everything, the way how we experience living on all kind of different levels. And the super patch becomes a bridge to that. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time, for being on the call this evening. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this information with you. It's my passion. It's what I love doing. And believe me when I tell you, after 25 years of clinical experience, I have not come across anything that impacts human well-being more so than the super patches, nor have I come across anything that is more profoundly impacting on a human's life than a person who will take responsibility, stand in their sovereignty, and start to take charge of their life to live it in the right direction. So, with that, folks, I want to say God bless you. Thank you very much. Have a great week ahead, and perhaps we'll see you tomorrow evening on the call. God bless you.